Like, does that really count? And I don't know. I'm of the thinking that maybe it's possible, but I think you have to meet someone to really consider them your best friends. Yeah. Because when we chat with each other on Skype or Facebook, it's all very instant gratification, I should say, and we don't really know if we'd really be there for each other in real life. Like, yeah, we can, I don't know, maybe help each other out, like PayPal or something, if one needs it, or go on each other's shows, stuff like that. We can do things like that, but would it be different if we live closer? I think so, because I think a lot of intimacy actually gets lost on the internet. And so it's kind of fictitious the way we are online to some degree. Like, we have a lot more courage on here. And so I think because of that, we're somewhat, we all kind of play a character, I should say, to a degree. But I think within that character is a lot of who we are. So the big question is, can someone just basically online be your best friend? I don't know, but I think there's different tiers. Like, if you've known someone online for maybe, I don't know, 10 years, and you've gotten along with them like very very good with very few fights, I think they can be considered, a good friend. But I really don't think that best friends are possible just over the internet. You haven't met them because, again, it takes getting used to someone. You have to read body language. You have to do all this. You have to really have a drink with someone to really get to know them, I think. But yes, you can. I think you can have friends, but I just don't think it can be best friends, and maybe even close to best friends. But really, you need to meet someone. And I'm not talking about romantically or anything like that. Let's not get confused here. I'm just talking about just friends, people that you'll probably never meet in real life. Just usually it's at a community like Reddit or Spreaker or whatever. So that's what I'm talking about here. So I think the answer really is yes and no. I think you can have friends online, but I don't think they can really be that caliber of best friend, because unless you've actually been there with someone and shoveled snow out, or fixed their car, or vice versa, it's just you need that human interaction. I think that really gets lost. But I understand why. We can't all hang out with each other at all times, but we do share somewhat of a common interest on Spreaker here. So I I just want to say, friends, yes; best friends, no. Meet up first, then you can be best friends. Eh?
All right. So you just heard it from Apocales. And how can you disagree with that? Now, he was talking about a certain level of friend. And now this is something we had not discussed. This best friends things, that's a different kind of deal there. When you're talking about best friends, I mean, well, I guess it is fair to say, I said during a couple of my shows that someone who is probably my best friend is someone I haven't met. Now, how am I measuring that? This comes down to personal preference. How do you measure it? Shoveling snow? That's something a best friend would help you do. I've had friends show up. This friend that lives out west, she's only showed up online, but she's shown up, and let's call it effort. Because isn't that the root of what all this is? Whether you're shoveling snow or someone helping you, fix your car or bailing you out of jail, it's effort. It's someone willing to part with effort or money or time for you. That's what a good friend's going to do. And so this friend with me it wasn't just money, which it was sometimes. It was mostly time. And you're talking about messages going back and forth that are 10, 12, 14 paragraphs long, where we're trying to understand each other's problems, and we are. Because we're putting in that effort. It really comes down to effort. Now, like Apocles said, and this is what I mentioned earlier about the kayaking thing, you have friends who circle around social practices, whether it's a hobby or a political belief or something like that. These circles of friends kind of stay there, don't they? You don't see them outside of that much. Someone like RD over in Holland, he wants to be my real friend, where we just talk on Skype for 2 and 3 hours at a pop. And I would love to do that with him. The problem is I don't like talking on the phone or anything like the phone for very long. Something about it. Maybe it's because I was at Gateway and I was tied to the phone for 10-hour shifts 4 days a week. I couldn't stand it. I loved working there, but that part really wore on me. And so I have this natural aversion to the phone, and I found out maybe there's a genetic component to it, because my daughter has it, and there are people in my family that have it that just cannot stand talking on the phone. Don't know what that's about. Maybe it's maybe it's something Apocales was talking about, how you have to see body language. Body language is about 80-90% of the communication you have with someone when you're with them talking. So I don't think that's an unusual, oh my goodness, yeah, got a little friend here with me. Got a little friend named Sienna, yeah, doing the Outside Mobile Show, yeah, and she is a beautiful dog, and I got a feeling she'll end up sleeping with me tonight. And didn't even have to buy her a drink. How about that? So that's great. But I don't know. She may decide not to. And you know how women are finicky like that. That's all right. Yeah. Yeah, she's a good and beautiful dog. Oh, Lordy. So, yeah, we're talking about, here's a real friend, And they say that, we're getting claps. I think they want you back in. Yeah, I have an entire CIA protective mission around that uses attack dogs, long-range and short-range snipers, and I'm a CIA asset, so I have to be protected. And but it's not because I feel like I need the protection. It's just part of you sign stuff. Do you really pay attention to what you sign? I don't. I just sign anything, and then oh no, now you got to have all kinds of teams around you, and they're like, hey man. Do you know there's a risk out there? And yeah, I'm sure there is. Okay, so now we've heard what I had to say about Friends. Not real deep. We heard what Apocales had to say about Friends. He was good at summarizing. I agree with that. But what we have not heard is what someone who most would consider an expert has to say about Friends. And we're going to hear that now. It's TEDx observer Robin Dunbar. Can the internet buy you more friends? And he's not literally talking about buy, but let's listen to this.
Very much. I'm here to convince the 5 of you in the audience that aren't actually on Facebook that the whole thing is completely overrated and all your prejudices were correct. Oh my goodness. There are lots of us not on Facebook. Okay, I don't know what the rest of you are going to do for the next 14 minutes, but I guess at some level, this has happened before with email, I think, back in the late 80s, early 90s, and that kind of thing. But particularly when Facebook came on stream, I think there was a kind of promissory note made on the tin can by the techies that created it, which said this is going to open you up to the global village. You're going to have hundreds of thousands of friends all over the world. And the real question is that so? The short answer is no. Despite the fact that Facebook allows you to put 5,000 friends up on the can, as it were, in fact, most people don't. And if, as a result of sort of this discussion about who your friends are on Facebook, Facebook actually started to look at their own data. And when they did an analysis of the entire, whatever it is, 400 million Facebook users and looked at all the numbers of friends people had, the average was actually about 150. The modal value, the most common value, is somewhere between 120 and 130, which I think is about right, because you've got to leave a little room before the 150 for Granny, who's sort of not really online yet, and a few odd people like that. But the key to the issue is really, even though you sign up and can sign up lots and lots of people, in fact, you spend most of your time talking to only a very few of them. These are Facebook's own data here, and they're looking at the number of people just measured in different ways you have, sort of traffic with that you're talking to. And it's sort of divided up between those who have only about 50 friends, 150 friends, and 500 friends. And although the number of friends listed is increasing by an order of magnitude, by a factor of 10, the number of close friends, if you like, that most of your time on Facebook is spent talking to is actually quite small. It's only somewhere between 3 and about 10 or so. And the reason for that is there appears to be a cognitive limit on the number of individuals we can keep in a sort of relationship with us. And this comes off the back of work we were doing on the size of social groups in monkeys and apes. And these are the key data here. This is average group size in different species of monkeys and different species of apes. These are chimpanzees, gorillas, gibbons, as it happens, against a measure of brain size. And you can see, particularly for the apes, this is a very clear line. This block here turns out to be 3 separate grades, rather tightly defined grades, a bit like this. But the key thing is if you plug humans into this regression equation, and the human brain data are from the same data set as all the primate data, we get a predicted value off the great ape equation of about 150. That's what's now known as Dunbar's number. Ironically, it was so christened on Facebook. And if you were the person who did that, and you're here today, thank you very much for making my career. Is this really true that that's the size of our groups? The answer is yes. I mean, here's a bunch of casual examples of human organizations that have that sort of size, somewhere between 100 and 200. And these are our attempts really to look at real human relationships, if you like, in this context. These are the census sizes for hunter-gatherer groups. And so all human societies are multi-layered. So these are a sort of series of grouping layers, community layers you've got. And it's this one here, the red dots, which are the key. They're all the same type of cluster of community, and they cluster very nicely around the value of 150, which is the blue line, and the red dotted lines are the confidence intervals around that. So they all fit really quite nicely within it. And this was our very first attempt to look at what it meant for you as an individual. And we asked people to tell us who they were sending Christmas cards to, not the number of cards they were sending, but who were in the household, the total number of people in the household. And that turns out to be very close to 150. The average in this data set was 154. There's a lot of variability around that. Some of us are incredibly mean and don't send any cards at all. Some people send them to their butcher and their baker and their lawyer and all those kind of important people. But the key is that it's nicely peaked here around 150. It turns out that the reason for that is it's a problem with your brain. And we've been able to show with neuroimaging studies, and a series of neuroimaging studies, and these have now been replicated by other people, so the effect really is quite robust, is that the number of friends you have is essentially a function of the size of this bit of the brain up here, right above the eyes. That's the bit that's hugely important in managing social interactions, it turns out. The other bits that are critical along the temporal lobe here, just sort of behind the ear, as it were, inside the skull from the ear. And it's the sort of circuitry between these two that makes up this kind of social cognition circuit that in turn determines the number of friends you have. And what this allows you to do, this circuit seems to allow you to do, is to understand how other people are thinking, the state of their minds, as it were. And it's the number of individuals whose minds you can handle in this kind of way that seems to set the limit on the total number of friends you have. So I'm sorry to have to tell you, well, there is an interesting question as to whether that bit of the brain, or any bit of the brain, can sort of expand or contract as a result of practice during childhood in particular. And that's quite likely. I mean, the brain is much more plastic than we thought. But I'm really sorry to have to tell most of you here that if you're now in your early 20s, it's too late to change. You're stuck with the friends that you've got. Why is time important in the context of friendships? If you like to think of how you organize your social life, it has two key components. There's that cognitive component, it's just sort of trying to keep track of the nature of your relationship with other individuals. But time plays a very important component in that process because it's investing time in your relationships that makes them a relationship. So the strength of that relationship, the sense of emotional closeness, is determined by how much time you invest in your individual friendships. And just to illustrate